I remember walking behind my dad down our gravel lane one day, and I remember walking behind him and imitating his steps as best I could. I wanted to be just like Dad. I found out after my father passed away that he had written, "I didn't live life so much as it lived me." And when I found that out, it really described my father's life and how he lived it. A man's life is really influenced in a lot of ways by his upbringing. And with Dad, that was certainly the case. You know, he lost his father when he was 13 years old. Grandpa died an alcoholic. 3 years later, he loses his brother tragically in a drowning in the St. Joseph River up in Leo. He drops out of high school, joins the Marines, in many ways probably to escape, you know, all the pain that he had been dealing with. Well, where does he end up? Vietnam. And he experienced what a lot of men who went to Vietnam experienced, which was the horror of war. And so he just keeps stuffing it. He marries my mom. I'm born. He's confused. He doesn't really know what he wants to do. He's studying to be a teacher, a professional, but at the same time he's feeling these draws from the world of drugs, of partying, of this very loose lifestyle. And that will, of course, deteriorate a marriage and deteriorate a family. You know, around 1980, I would have been about 8 or 9 years old. Dad left the family with his girlfriend and moved to Florida. And when he did, he made a point to avoid paying child support of not letting anybody know where he was. And so I'm 8 or 9 years old, and Dad is gone from my life. That separation was really the impetus for what my mom had been desiring for a long time, which was to return to church. She had grown up in church. She married my father. He had no interest in church, and we began attending church. I became a Christian in 3rd grade and trusted God for my salvation. And at that point in time, we as a family began praying for Dad. You know, he'd only been gone for a short time. We thought that maybe God would save him like he had saved us, and he would return to the family. I'm sure my mom's earnest desire was for that. I know as us kids, you know, we began the simple prayer, "Lord, have Dad accept Jesus into his heart." And it didn't happen. Well, the reality of it is you pray that way for a while, and then when you don't see the prayer answered, it can become a heartache. You just struggle with, you know, I could pray, but man, that's going to take a huge miracle for this man to become a Christian. And frankly, I didn't engage in that battle. I didn't have the willpower or the belief that could easily happen. Fast forward to my mid-30s, I get an email from a good friend of mine, Mark Mays, that he was forwarding from a friend that he had grown up with, whose wife had just been diagnosed with an incurable cancer, and she had been basically given a death sentence. The appeal went out from her husband for people to begin fasting and praying on Tuesdays. I had never really fasted in my life, and so the appeal went out. And something captured me with that. On Tuesdays, I started fasting and praying. For breakfast, I would go into my office before anybody was there and spend a half an hour in prayer. At lunchtime, I would go to the Y and walk the track, put on headphones with praise music and just pray. And I prayed for her, and I prayed for her family, and I prayed for her healing. In 3 months, we received an email. Through a miracle, she had been healed. An absolute unbelievable story that is a whole nother journey video. So something like that happens, and of course you get kind of jazzed. You know, it's like, wow, this is really unbelievable. I prayed and I fasted and with other people, and this lady was healed. So what do I pray for next? What's some unbelievable, impossible thing that God could do that I could start praying for? And after some thought, it became apparent it was Dad. So I began fasting and praying for Dad, and this is probably late 2008. And I remember sometimes being very aware of spiritual battle going on while I'm praying. I remember one time I was praying and just felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up because of what I was praying and how I was praying and engaging the enemy for Dad's eternal salvation. Dad, ironically enough, was diagnosed with cancer in about July of 2011. After battling it for about a year, it metastasized into his brain, and at that point there was nothing they could do. I remember him calling me and saying, you know, I'm making plans to come up there and visit you guys one last time before I pass away. And he was going to come up in September, and he wasn't able to do it. He died in late August. He passed away down in Texas without us being able to visit him one last time. What I came to find out after he passed away was one of the home health care providers, his name was Aaron Collins. I got to talk to him on the phone after Dad passed away. He was there with Dad as Dad began asking questions. How do I get to heaven? I know I've lived a life full of bad things. Is there a way? I mean, can God really forgive me for everything that I've done? God placed Aaron there that day, and when Dad asked, what do I need to do? Aaron had the answer, which is just believe and confess your sins, and God will save you. Well, do I need to go to a pastor? Do I need to do some kind of spiritual rite to do this? No, you can do it right here. And right there, Aaron Collins prayed with my dad, and Dad trusted Christ. And he passed within 4 days. When you fast and pray, you buy in, you're owning something, and when God works through that, you see the miracle. There was as much happening in me, if not more, through that fasting and praying than my prayers being answered, especially as God started to change what I was praying for and how I was praying, and changed it from, here's my list of things I would like God to do, to, God, what would it be like if you saved Rick Pancake? Because there is no way this man on earth could ever be talked into becoming a Christian. And by that, only you could be glorified, because there's no other explanation that could be given for why this man crossed the line of faith. Dad was saved. Scratch that one off the prayer list. So what do I do next? And again, I'm not ready to give up on this. I still have other things on the list. There's a couple that I know very close to me. They mean a lot to me, aren't walking with God, and frankly, they're in the center of the bullseye, and we'll see what God does.